Hello and welcome to the lesson. Last time I showed you how to change table dimensions, padding, and background color. Today we'll focus on formatting table borders. Here's the table from the previous lesson. Perhaps you remember that one of the first attributes I showed you was the border attribute. The value is set to 1 pixel. If you want a table without a border, just change the value to 0. Let's view the result in a browser. Notice that if you use the right background colors, the result can look great. Maybe you'd prefer a thicker border. In that case, change the value to 10 pixels. That might seem to be too much, but you'll see exactly how the border attribute works. Now we can notice two things. The first is that only the outer border got thicker, while the borders between individual cells remained the same. The next thing is that there are two different shades of gray in the border, which adds a 3D relief effect. Using the border color property, I'll try to change the color of the border to red. When I view the website in a browser, there are again two different shades of red. As you can see, it works exactly the same like with the black default border. I'll also try blue, and the effect is still the same. This is the so-called outset border, and there is a simple way to change it using the border style property. There are several border styles we can choose from. The opposite of the default outset value is the inset value. Notice that the shades of blue switched. We can also switch the value to groove, which looks like this. The opposite of groove is ridge. Another possible value is dotted, which literally makes the border dotted. If you want to use dashes instead of dots, set the border style property to dashed. I quite like double borders, so I'll set the value to double. However, it's likely that you won't be using any of these border styles very much. The most common is still the classic solid border, so I'll set the value to solid and keep it that way. Next, I'll show you the border width property, which sets the thickness of the border. I'll try setting the value to 1 pixel and see what happens. As you can see, the border reduced to 1 pixel. This means that the border attribute inside the table element no longer applies. Remember that the CSS property has higher priority. It seems that I won't need the border attribute anymore, so I'll delete it. After refreshing the browser, all cell borders have disappeared. You've probably noticed that so far we've only formatted the outer border. How do we add the inner borders? It's very simple. All we have to do is copy these three properties from the table selector and add them to TD and TH elements. Now the cells also have borders. However, this syntax can be shortened significantly. I'll delete these three properties and replace them with only one border property. After the colon, I'll first type the width of the border, which is 1 pixel. Next, I'll add border style, which is solid. Last is the color, so I'll type blue. As you can see, the table still looks the same, but we've saved some space in the source code. Of course, it's possible to use different border styles for different borders. I'll demonstrate this on the TH elements. I'll add the border property again and set the width to 3 pixels. I'd like to use a double border, and I want it to be green. When I view the result in a browser, you can see that the table header has a different border. However, I don't really like mixing styles, so I'll delete this line of code and keep the border solid. You frequently see simple solid borders with no spaces between the cells. How do we achieve that? The spaces between cells are caused by the cell spacing attribute. I'll try setting the value of this attribute to 0. As you can see, the spaces are gone, but the border is twice the width we wanted. To deal with this, we'll use the BORDER-COLLAPSE property. This property merges borders of neighboring cells to one border. Notice that the border is now only 1 pixel thick. I'll delete the cell spacing attribute because we don't need it anymore. Sometimes you might want to display the border only between rows or only between columns. We can specify the border property by adding either the left, right, top, or bottom keyword. Let's add a special formatting to this border. I'll add the border left property and set the value to none. This setting will disable the left border. I'll do the same with the right border. When I refresh the browser, you can see that only rows are separated by borders. In contrast, if I turn off the top and bottom borders, only columns are separated. Finally, we can separate the table header by adding the border bottom property to the TH elements. I'd like to add a 3 pixels wide double and blue border. This is how the finished table looks. As you can see, there are lots of formatting options to choose from. Thank you for joining me today, and I'll look forward to seeing you the next time.